Defense Department now investigating how a drone was able to get by air defenses and kill 3 American troops in Jordan.
Political analyst and security expert Ric Epps joining us this morning. Ric, good morning. Good to see you.
Good morning.
Who was behind this attack?
It's Iran. And when I say that with the notion that there are proxies, Iranian proxies, not Iran directly, but if you follow the trail, it's Iran. And because of that, it creates a lot of other issues because they're using proxies to commit these actions. This one, it looks like the Kataib Hezbollah group, which is based in Iraq, looks like them. This is their fingerprint, if you would, or footprint. Do we know for sure? Not completely, but there's a very, very high probability. All the intel sources say that this is the group that committed the action.
Iran always denies that they're associated with these proxy groups, yet the whole world seems to say, we all know it's you. Yeah. Why would they not just say, yeah, it's us?
Well, it becomes more...
Wouldn't they want that source of pride? I don't understand how the whole world knows something and they keep denying it.
Well, this is sort of, if you think about it, it serves Iran's interest to not be directly say, hey, I'm the guy, right? Because if you do that, then the reaction from the rest of the world, the responses may become more direct in Iran as opposed to on the periphery. And so now with this, it allows you to be able to target individual groups. It's sort of like a safe space.
How do you balance that with the fact that the whole world knows it's you?
Yeah.
That's
an interesting,
Because now the U.S. is sitting here. I wanted to ask you what options the U.S. has moving forward.
Yeah.
Now we're sitting here with 3 dead American soldiers, and Iran saying it wasn't us, and the whole world saying it was you.
Yeah. Well, this is where people don't want to hear this, and I understand that because people are looking.
Maybe they need to hear it.
Yeah. I mean, people want to know. But say, of course, the natural thing is let's go smack them upside the head, right? That's the natural response, and I certainly get that. The game of politics and the geostrategic interests, the economic interest, the military installations, the trade routes through the Red Sea, all that has to be taken into account. And people don't want to hear that, but that's the fact of the reality, right? That's where the rubber really hits the road, because people may say, let's go hit them upside the head, but the consequences of that are very high. And I know we'll talk about that in a second, but when people want the bloodlust, and certainly American people like let's go show them we're John Wayne, let's go in there and go after them. However, to do so, there are wider implications that people sometimes in their emotions don't really understand. If you're paying $10 a gallon for gas, for example, as opposed to $5 a gallon for gas. Right. So there are things that ultimately people will have to consider before, in the longer, even though they don't like it, this is the game that is played with regard to these types of actions. That's why the question of proportional response is an interesting notion, and we can chat about that in a second.
And we'll talk about the consequences. The president has said that he has decided how he will respond to this, even though it hasn't fully been disclosed yet. You talk about these consequences, Ric. There's obviously the financial consequences, but we're already in a big mess in the Middle East. So the consequences of how the response will be addressed could have far-reaching implications in that entire region.
Absolutely, and that's also why our policies, our developing policies with regard to what's taking place are so critical. Because as we all know, of course, this is all on the periphery of Gaza, right? These groups are saying they're committing the actions as a result of what's taken place in Gaza. And there may be a part of that's true, but this is the way to stoke the flames to keep the region unstable, which serves the interests of Iran more than anyone. The problem is that, again, you've got geostrategic players in there, and Jordan certainly is in the middle of this. They've got multiple countries on the periphery of their territory, including Israel, West Bank, they've got Iraq, Syria, they've got all these countries, and Saudi Arabia, all on their borders. So the danger, as you mentioned earlier, of it spreading and becoming a bigger problem certainly is possible, because again, as we talked about the issue of unintended consequences, there may be unintended consequences because this may spiral out of control if those entities, those powers that are controlling them can't do something to control their their assets, their militants, for example.
Is this a smart strategy on the part of Iran? Have they found a loophole knowing that they can do this and run these proxy groups, knowing full well what you said? The world doesn't want a bigger conflict. The world doesn't want to attack us directly. So we're going to keep doing this because you're not going to do anything about it. Is that a smart strategy?
Actually, it is. And I'll tell you why. Because they have what we don't have. We don't have proxies in the region that we can stab at them. So when we talk about, well, how do we respond to Iran in this situation? Well, there's a certain level of response, but depending on the action that they have committed. And that could go all the way from direct, of course, directly attacking Iran. But usually it has to do with going after assets. They have billions of dollars of assets in Syria. So the idea of us possibly dealing with some of those things is certainly plausible. So they'll be proportional to, and it could also deal with the shipping lanes. The United States has multiple now military assets and naval assets in the region that they can now deploy, and actually to that area specifically. The UK is now, and the EU are now sending assets down, military assets to the region to protect their economic interest. So this has the potential of going broader, even though at the same time, Iran just said that the Iranian ambassador to the UN just made a statement today about that, any attack would be, we would have a decisive response. Wonk, wonk. Okay, so you say that, but in some way, yes, they will attack an asset or indirectly attack, but in terms of them actually coming after the United States, that will never happen. They'll just use the proxies to do it.
Where do we go with this? You hit me, I hit you back.
Yeah.
You hit me again, I hit you back.
Yeah.
We've talked over the years, and especially over the past few years, with the instability just within the people of Iran. We just went through the whole women life freedom movement, and the government still, the regime is still in place. At one point, does this hitting back and forth make a bigger change where things will start to fall, maybe in a positive way, maybe in a negative way?
Yeah. Well, see, that's the $20 question, because here's what happens. So you have a scenario where if we decide to commit actions against Iran directly, well, we know for a fact that a lot of people, innocent people, are going to die in that response, right? So what does that look like if we try to get rid of them? What will the possible next regime look like? Because to cut the head of the snake off doesn't mean that you don't have the potential civil crisis that will occur with regard to the religious infrastructure. What does that look like post, if we go in and really commit action? There's a lot of things on the ground that would require infrastructure change, that more than just saying, hey, we're going to go in and just commit these actions. And that's a long-term game, but as you see throughout history, this is the way that the Middle East works, and it's a weird Game of Thrones kind of thing where these little power structures are all sort of vying, fortifying themselves internally. And then you look at it, for example, like the Prime Minister of Iraq was really brought to power through factions of Iran. So they walk a fine line toward trying to sort of suck up to us, but also sucking up to Iran. And so all these little power plays, these countries are all tied together indirectly, even though we don't all know about it and we don't talk about it publicly. Privately, they all deal with each other. And that's part of the dangerous part that we don't see, but we have to deal with the consequences of, right?
Right.
Yeah, so that's
now
how
we
the
wait
mess
and
works.
see what the response is going to be. The president said he decided on what that's going to be. We don't know. It could be over several days. We'll see. Ric Epps, as always, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.